Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Fitness Level 2 Q&A. Hope you guys are getting ready for great holidays. I'll give everybody a second here to kind of log on. And we're going to go through, as always, some of the we're going to go through some of the questions that were submitted beforehand. I'll go through those first. And then if you have questions, on the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. Just go on there, type in the questions, and I'll get to those after, and we'll go until we answer all these questions. Okay, so I'm going to get going. So we're going to start. So basically, let's see. First question from James. Hopefully, James, you're there. First question is, how do you progress to one leg stance strength? Do you reduce the weight or stay on two legs until they're stronger? Well, good question. I would say that we kind of do a combination of all the above. So first and foremost, if we're going to take our stances, let's say the first thing we do is we do a split stance, right? So split stance, but a wide base. That gives you the most stability, right? We kind of talked about this in the fitness class, that if you can see me here. So I'm back a little bit right there. So this is like a little farther. That's your most stable stance, right? So if we're doing pushing or pulling, because now I've got lateral stability and I've got front to back stability. If I go to square stance, well, now I've got lateral stability. I just don't have front to back stability, right? If I go to narrow base, like tandem, well, then I've got front to back stability. I just don't have lateral stability. That's why this is the most stable, right? So we start here, then we progress to here. Then if we're going to go to single leg, we bring the feet together. Now, if I'm going to go single leg, back up just a little bit. If I'm going to stand on my left leg, if I have the weight in my left hand, right? If I'm doing, let's say I'm doing a deadlift here. If I have my weight in my left hand, that's easier than weight in my right hand. Weight in my right hand, now I've got to counterbalance this rotation. So from a progression standpoint, what I would do is I would say we go to same side, holding the weight same side, or ipsilateral, strength first, and then we go to contralateral. And then when I do that, typically just because you're stressing the shoulder girdle more with one side, we do reduce the weight. So I usually reduce the weight first, get them to the point where they can stabilize. And I literally, I would, if I was take a rule of thumb, I'd probably reduce the weight somewhere between 30 and 40%, if not more, when we first do this with single leg. And then, I think people can build up strength from there. So that's hopefully what you're asking, James. If you have any questions on that, just let me know. Okay, so let me go back over here, see so I can see questions. Okay. Next one was, what intensity of workout should be given in the off season? So this is a great question. The problem with that question is, when's the off season? For most golfers, professional golfers, I should say, we don't even have an off season anymore. But the good news is for your high school players, kids, and okay, now we do have an off season. So literally most players increase their intensity in the off season, right? So this is the time to go and create strength gains. I'm not worried so much about them being sore, even though I'm always worried about them being sore. I always want to support this with, good nutrition. But I would say that in the off season, we ramp up the intensity. We go through and I don't want to say like we ramp it up 20%. It depends on the player, but we definitely pick up the intensity. They're not playing as much, especially for in cold climates. We can focus more on the body, start developing platform strength first, then we kind of move into power as we taper down some of the strength, and then we try and maintain those gains throughout the entire season. That's the ideal world. Unfortunately, we can't do like periodization in golf. For professional golf, we just have too many tournaments. The season is year long, so we have to kind of do micro periodization. But I would say intensity definitely bumps up a lot in the off season. If we're trying to develop strength, even speed, I would say we kind of, as they start to recover more and they're not playing so much and they're feeling healthy, I think we can get some good speed gains during the off season as well that we can try and maintain during the season. So intensity for workouts in the off season definitely should go up. And if you want more, I'm just kind of answering the questions as I read it here. If I'm not giving you enough detail, just shoot it in the questions underneath. Okay, Ryan, in aging populations that don't move well, do you have faster success with working on strength or mobility? Well, that's a no-brainer, Ryan. Great friend of ours, Mike Boyle, strength coach, always says for every decade you've been alive, that's what percentage of your program should be focused on mobility. So if you're 70% of your workout should be mobility. If you're 20, he says 20%. Now, I would tell you that I feel like with a senior citizen, like let's say you've got somebody who literally has hardly any mobility at all. When you give them like 5 degrees to a teenager, that feels like 50 degrees. I mean, it feels like, man, I feel like I'm 10 again. So mobility by far is the thing where I think you're going to get the biggest bang for the buck. Now, let's talk about this for a second. How do you get mobility? I think a lot of people always, when they have this conversation, like what's more important, strength or stretching? The question you asked is what's more important, strength or mobility? I think the question is what's more important, stability or mobility? And then I always say you have to go after mobility, but remember, you can use strength training to improve your mobility, right? So your goal is to improve their mobility. How you get the mobility can be through fascial work, joint mobilization. It can also be through strength training. So if your focus is on mobility and you're using strength, I would say you're working on mobility, even though strength is a bonus, right? So in aging populations that don't move well, I get faster success working on mobility. Okay, next one. Thoughts on reflexive performance reset, SuperSpeed training during fitness training or during golf practice sessions from Willie. Willie, so first one's easy. I have no idea what reflex performance reset is. So I don't like to comment on anything I don't know. So unfortunately, I can't give you any advice on this one. I don't know what reflex performance reset is. I've never heard of it. Love to hear more about it. Let me know. Now, the SuperSpeed one, during training, during your fitness training or during golf practice sessions, I like it during training. To me, it's part of your speed development program. And anytime you're working on your speed development program, I like to give them time to go practice this new speed. Because listen, if you have 10 miles an hour with your 7-iron, hitting it 20 yards over the green isn't a great thing when you're playing, right? So I like to learn what my new distances are, learn how to manage those things. So I like doing most of my speed training during my fitness training. And I do a little warm up, get myself my base platform activated, muscles activated, and then I do my speed training. Don't do speed training when you're exhausted at the end of the workout. Always do it near the start, but always start with some type of dynamic warm up to get your muscles prepared and your body prepared for that. So I do it during fitness training. It can't hurt to do golf practice sessions, but just know that if you're going to do it before you play golf, you might have a little struggle on the golf course that day getting your distances down. What are some different ways to train rotation for someone who hangs back, Alexander? So I think you got 2 questions there, right? You've got how do I improve rotation and how do I fix hanging back? I kind of do those separately. If you're asking how do I combine those two? So first thing I would do is I'd work on rotation exercises. Then I'd work on weight shift exercises. And if you're like, how do I combine my rotation exercises with my weight shift exercises? It's kind of that feeling, right? Is if we're doing some type of pushing pulling exercise, right? So instead of if I was working on pushing pulling, let's say I've got a cable cross and I'm doing my push right here. Well, then maybe I would have them load their back leg and then drive forward onto their left leg, right? So it's not a massive weight shift, but they can kind of feel this rotation. I think chopping does a great job of this, starting here and then driving down. So chopping exercises, you'll see tons of guys doing chopping exercises. Even lifting actually does great weight shift into the backswing, right? So lifting exercises, chopping exercises, pushing exercises, pulling exercises, you can combine your weight shift. I also think that your medicine ball drills are great. Into a wall, focusing on your rotary throws, stepping into, if you have a cinder block wall, I always feel like those help. I hope that's answering your question. That's kind of what I'm thinking when I think rotation, combining rotation for someone who hangs back. I also like, if someone hangs back, I also like training, back to our first question, single leg stance exercises on their lead leg. Sometimes it's the brain just doesn't trust that the lead side is stable. So having them stand on the lead side and then performing their chops, their pushes, their pulls, just kind of gets the brain going, hey, I'm actually stable over here and I can do that. All right, last one that I have for my pre-questions is, could you show us the prone diagonal thoracic spine extension exercise from the World Golf Fitness Summit? This is from David. Okay, so let's see. David, could you show us the prone diagonal thoracic spine extension exercise? Okay, prone diagonal. So laying face down. So in the World Golf Fitness Summit, Randy Myers and I went through thorax and try and open up the thorax. And we did a bunch of different exercises. If you're talking about, are you talking about the one that was quadruped, Dave? If your ears are on there and you're watching, kind of type in and tell me if you're talking about the quadruped one. Prone diagonal thoracic spine extension exercise. I don't remember which one was prone. We had a supine one where you were laying on your back doing diagonal curl ups. We had a prone one where it wasn't prone, we were hands and knees with our reach backs that we kind of talked about. And we had a bunch of seated ones. If you're listening, please dial in the questions and I'll come back to you, Dave. Okay, let me go. We just got a couple of questions here, Jeff. I thought you never bring a stability correction to a mobility problem. Jeff, that's 100% our philosophy. That's like rule number 1 in the SFMA, is you never bring a stability problem to a mobility correction. So let me explain what that means. Is let's say your ankle doesn't have mobility. If your ankle doesn't have mobility, well, a lot of times your body will try and create mobility somewhere else, like in the arch of your foot. All of a sudden, your arch of your foot collapses. Now, a lot of people walk in with a collapsed arch, and what most medical practitioners do is they say, oh, your foot's flat, let's give you an arch support. Now, if you put an arch support in there, that's a stability correction. The problem is your problem was a mobility problem, it was an ankle mobility. Because of your ankle mobility, you lost foot stability. You put a stability correction device in a mobility problem. Now, what's the problem with that is, well, now the foot was kind of your body's way of getting around this mobility problem. But now that the orthotic is there, or the arch support, it can't use that method. So it tries to figure out another way to get around the mobility problem, and it works its way up the chain. So now usually the patient comes in and goes, my knee hurts, my hip hurts, or my back hurts. So what's this SI thing I've been reading about? And you'll see all those things because the body is trying to compensate by moving up. So we're saying, listen, you don't want to start with a stability problem, stability correction, if it's a mobility problem. That's kind of what we were just talking about before with mobility stability. I always feel like mobility is more important. So our goal is to get mobility. Now, if that same person has an ankle mobility problem, I can use strength training exercises to try and get mobility in the ankle, but I'm not trying to stabilize the foot. I'm trying to go after the mobility problem, which is the ankle. And that's kind of what I was trying to clarify there, Jeff. Robert, updates on the ELDOA Golf program. Great question. So it's all been done. We actually had Janet Alexander and Dan Hellman came in. They filmed the entire ELDOA program. It's freaking awesome. I've kind of previewed the entire thing. Excited. It's literally on our website, ready to launch. We're just waiting for the last approvals from everybody on the video just to make sure they're happy. So everybody's kind of spread out all over the world right now. So we've got them hopefully viewing this once. I know Janet's somewhere halfway around the world, I think in Norway. Dan's in Florida. I think we have Guy's in France. Once everybody reviews it, which I think they're doing right now, and we get the thumbs up, we're going to push it live. So I promise you will know when we launch this, and I'm hoping it's within days. And that's the update on the ELDOA program. Okay, so let's see. Got another one here. And remember, Dave, if you're there, I wanted some more. If you can remember, if you're there, more information on the prone diagonal thoracic spine extension exercise. Okay, Robert, another one. Examples of go-to single leg stability drills for geriatric golfers. Okay, Robert, what age are we talking when you say geriatric? Give me a quick age group, age bucket. Because sometimes single leg stance drills can be dangerous for depending on the age we're at, and I just wanted to see what age we're talking about here. We talking 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s? What are we talking about? 55 to, you're calling 55 to 65 geriatric? I shouldn't even talk back to you. Okay. That's all right. I'm kidding, Robert. I'm getting close, man. I'm getting close to that. So basically, you threw me off there. So single leg stance stability. So single leg stance stability for your 55 to 65-year-old golfer. To me, I feel like 55, 65 is still young, and so I think that to me, I think you could do most of everything. The big problem with single leg stance stuff that I like to do is I like to start quadruped, I then go half kneeling, and then I go standing. And the reason I was asking is sometimes, depending on the age, it's hard for them to get down on their knee because of knee issues. But if you can see me here, go to video so I can see that real quick. Hold on, I'm just going to adjust the camera so I can see it. Okay, perfect. You can see me here. So literally, if I go quadruped, think about all the quadruped exercises, right? When I do this, this is really your first introduction to single leg stance. Let me go the other way, right? So my left hip is really, it's the first time as a baby starts crawling that they're really starting to learn to orient on one leg. So we do a lot of exercises on the in the quadruped position. Then we'll progress to half kneeling. In the half kneeling position, I like to start with a wide base. So now what's really important is I'm not leaning into my front leg. I put all my weight loaded vertical on this back leg. We call this the stacked position because literally my spine is stacked on top of my hip. This is the first time in exercise that now your spine is loaded, hips loaded. So this literally is single leg stance without the ankle, right, or below the knee. So all of our exercises, we're chopping, lifting, pushing, pulling. Those are all a lot of my go-to exercises from here. I even put bands from the thigh to the shin, wrap around so that they have to stabilize their base and do all your exercises, like we said, pushing, pulling, throwing, catching, overhead, chopping, lifting, all the above, right? In this position, once they feel like they feel stable here, we will narrow their base. So now I'll put the foot and the knee right on top of each other and we'll repeat, because now it's true single leg stance. They're on this right leg. They're not leaning forward. They're back into their leg. Core is engaged, so make sure they're not anterior tilted. From here, we'll repeat all the exercises. Now, again, I'm in my first progression of single leg stance. Once that feels good, then we'll stand up. We'll go to our split stance, right? Get our split stance, and then we'll go to single leg stance. Same exercises. So it's not really what's a go-to exercise isn't the way I think of it. There's a ton of exercises. It's what's the go-to progression to get the single leg stance. Quadruped, half kneeling, standing. Now, with 55 to 65-year-olds, I think you usually do all of those. If there's a knee issue, they can't put their knee down on the ground, or there's a hip issue where they feel like there's a problem down there, will we modify the positions, right? But I think with pillows, cushions, RX pads, really there's a lot of options to be able to get somebody into single leg stance. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Robert, you just said, what if they have a total knee issue? So if they have a total knee, then probably what I'm gonna probably suggest is that what depends on, okay, two things on total knee. First of all, usually the total knee is brand new, right? So it's brand new, it's actually a good knee. Usually the other one's their bad one, right? So I would still do some stuff on the other side just to make sure that side's stable. But if it's a total knee problem and we don't want to get them down on their knees, then we start lunge, split, standing. So we do everything up in the air, put a little bit of, I like using some of the mini bands or RNT to kind of like have them do like almost a step up. So their foot's here and I've got a little RNT, or I've got a little mini band around their leg that's pulling off to the side, and they step up and trying to feel what it feels like to go from a small box, like a 6-inch box, stepping up with some lateral pulling, front to back pulling, so they learn how to stabilize some type of resistance pulling them left and right. So a short box, having them do little step ups. I think most people feel very safe doing that. And I think you can adjust where the mini band is around their thigh or their shin to kind of adjust how you want them to stabilize. That's kind of, and again, on total knees, there's also different types of methods of fixing the knee. And you might want to check with their orthopedist or with them if it comes with any instructions. And what I mean is, like, a lot of times if a hip gets replaced or shoulder gets replaced, it'll come with a instruction like, do not do this. Obviously, you need to follow the instructions, right? But if there's no instructions and they said sky's the limit, go crazy, okay? Elliot, so Elliot's asking for a recap of the 4x4 matrix. So the 4x4 matrix is a philosophy of how we outline our exercise progressions. You know, I'm one of those guys where my background's engineering, so I always like systems. And I used to watch people do exercises and I would say, well, why are you prescribing that exercise before this exercise? Like, I would do this one first, but the people I respected tended to prescribe exercises in the same order. And this really came from an observation of me just watching these people going, what do they do in common, the people that we really respect? And what we noticed first was that there was this normal progression of exercises that basically was based on posture. Most great, let's say, exercise prescribers would start people with a supine or prone exercise, either laying on their back, laying on their stomach, where their whole body's supported. So like rolling exercises, right? any type of exercise where your whole body's supported is kind of where I saw most of these people start. Then what they would do is they would turn them over and they go quadruped. Now, if you think about the difference between on your back or on your stomach and quadruped is now your spine is suspended. It's still horizontal, but it's suspended between your hips and your shoulders. So they go from this supported position, the whole body's supported, to this suspended position, and they do quadruped. Now, it's kind of like a baby. You're born, you're on your back or your stomach, then you roll over 4.5 to 6 months, and all of a sudden you're crawling. Now, once you get to that suspended spine position, lots of cool things happen there. We get our first cross crawl, our first single leg stance that we saw, our first disassociation. And then all of a sudden you go to the half kneeling or the stack position. Now, like we talked about, we bring our spine on top of our hips. Now our spine's loaded, hips loaded. That's real single leg stance now for the first time. We go into that half kneeling position and then we go standing. So basically the first thing I noticed on these exercise progressions is people who did really well on getting people better fast, they tended to take exercises first on the ground, supported, then they took them quadruped, suspended with the spine, then they went stacked in the half kneeling or tall kneeling position, and they went standing. So our 4x4 progression starts with 4 postures: supported, suspended, stacked, standing. Then we also said, well, what if we're going to add resistance or add some type of a weight or a mini band, or what if we're going to help them provide feedback? How can we rank the order of what's easiest, what's hardest? So what we did is we looked at exercises as in, like, if I was going to add load, like I was going to teach you Olympic lifting, right? The first thing I would probably do is I probably wouldn't use any load, right? And I would give you a lot of feedback and teach you the movement, right? And there's a couple ways to teach feedback. I can kind of facilitate the movement, or I can challenge the movement and try and make you fall down and you try and learn how to stand up. So the first thing we always say is whenever you're going to prescribe an exercise, if you want to start adding load, the first thing you do is don't add load, just add some feedback, give them some help, right? Once you've given them feedback and they understand how to do the movement, then take your feedback away and just have them demonstrate the movement, right? Then if they can demonstrate the movement without you helping them, okay, let's add some load. Now, when we add load or capacity, well, now I'm going to actually give you some feedback. First time I put plates on the bar, I'm going to go, let's just make sure you're doing this properly. So we go to this capacity or loaded with feedback. And then once they look like they know what they're doing, they understand the maneuver, they've got some weight on there, we take our feedback away. And now they're just doing capacity or load. So we had 4 actual progressions of making an exercise harder. We had the first one, which was the easiest, just give them feedback and no load. Then we say, take away the feedback, just demonstrate the exercise. Then we say, okay, let's add some capacity or add some load, let's give them feedback. And then let's take away the feedback and it's just load. So basically you got 4x4s, we got 4 postures, we got 4 types of challenges or making the exercise harder. So we have our supported, suspended, stacked, standing. We've got our feedback, demonstrate, capacity with feedback, and capacity. If you take those and put them side by side, you'll have what I call the 4x4 matrix. 4 postures, 4 types of exercises, the easiest exercise to give somebody. So if you're like, I don't know, this person seems like they're geriatric, and I want to go really easy, you can give them a 1-1. What's a 1-1? Well, it's a supported position, so they're on their back or their stomach, and you're going to give them feedback, right? So it could be something where you're facilitating. They're doing a curl up, and you're helping them with the band. Then once you progress this, I like going like this. My progression is to get everybody to be able to do an exercise in the 4 position, standing with demonstrating properly. No load, demonstrating, which is a 4-2. So I always like to try, and my progressions always look like this. Get them to a 4-2, then add weight. So it goes 1-1, 1-2, 2-1, 2-2, 3-1, 3-2, 4-1, 4-2. That's my progression. Exercises, if you're going to order your exercises, I order them in 1-1, 1-2, all on the ground, giving them feedback and having them demonstrate. Once they can do that, I go quadruped, 2-1, 2-2, all quadruped, give them feedback, have them demonstrate. Then I go stacked, that's kneeling or tall kneeling, 3-1, 3-2, give them feedback, have them demonstrate, and then we go standing, 4-1, 4-2, having them standing, give them feedback, have them demonstrate. Once they can demonstrate every exercise, standing position, now we go to capacity. So now I'll go back to the 1 position, I'll go 1-3, 1-4, 2-3, 2-4, 3-3, 3-4, 4-3, 4-4, and when you're at 4-4, now basically exercise, sky's the limit, right? Elliot, hope that's a good review there for your 4x4, but that's how we do our progressions there. All right, guys, so I've answered all the questions I see here. I'm going to give you guys the 2-minute count. Oh, got another one. Saved by the bell here. All right, Jeff, what would be the best way to become one of your instructors doing a TPI seminar? Great question. So listen, we're always looking for great people to get involved with teaching TPI. We have simple requirements here. Number 1, you got to go to level 3. If you're going to teach level 1, you still have to be able to answer questions about our 2s and 3s. So once you're level 3, if you're interested, you let us know. We have a speaker class that we do. We're going to do this once a year. We used to do twice a year, but honestly, I think we're doing once a year now. We let, I think maximum is 20 people, 16 to 20 people register. You will see this getting posted soon. It'll probably be mid-year somewhere. If you want to be a TPI instructor, you have to become level 3. You have to go to the speaker school. At the speaker school, we will tell you, number 1, what we think you need to do to improve if you're not ready, or we'll tell you if you're ready. If you are ready, you would then come assist at one of our level 1 classes, because now when you assist, you come with different eyes. You're thinking about how I would present this stuff. And then we do workshops all over the world. We're always looking for great people, but that's the pathway. Okay, become an instructor. And hopefully, you know, if public speaking is something you're interested in, just remember this. I don't think people are born great speakers. I think public speaking is a skill and you're trained. And our speaker school is a pretty cool course. Okay, let's see. Explain the difference of the 4x4 matrix and 4x4 power exercises that Jason did. So basically in our fitness level 2, if you go through and look at that again, you'll see we have 3 matrices, right? We have our 4x4 functional, our foundational matrix, which is the 4x4 matrix that I just went over. That comes more from corrective exercise. Somebody can't do a movement, motor pattern problems. That's our 4x4 matrix. Then we have our 3x3 strength matrix. And this is how we develop platform strength using the different stances and different types of weights. And then we go into our 4x4 power matrix. Now the 4x4 power matrix is something that we've used with our players for years and years and years, and it's based on the 4 different power sources that we see out there. So we have, on golfers, there's 4 basic power sources that most golfers are trying to use. There's vertical thrust, that's why you see a lot of jumping, so vertical movement. There's rotary power, being able to rotate, that's the kinematic sequence, right? There's what I call arm chop power, which is putting your arms down. Like, think about it, I'm always trying to chop down to the ball. And then there's wrist. You can actually create power in your wrists, right? So I've got this vertical thrust, I've got this rotary power, I've got this arm chop power, and I've got wrist power. So I got 4 power sources. And then the way we develop power, and this is for adults, it's pretty simple. Our progression looks like this. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go after platform strength, so absolute strength. Make sure that you've got a platform of strength to develop power on. Then we're going to go after speed. So forget about the strength. Now it's just how fast can you move. Then we're going to go after speed strength. So now, how fast can you move that load, right? That's true power. It's like Olympic lifting, right? And then we do our big break theory, which is basically the biggest hitters in the world always can accelerate in both directions. There's always this history of power development in both directions, so we do opposite side. So if we're chopping right, we're going to chop left, right? So basically, if I take those 4 movements next to my 4 power sources, I've got vertical thrust, rotary power, I've got arm chop, I've got wrist, and then I've got my absolute strength, speed strength, and opposite. I've got my 4x4 matrix. What we do is we pick 1 or 2 of those power sources per training session. Let's say I do vertical thrust. And what I'll do is I'll do a absolute strength for vertical thrust. That could be a squat, a deadlift, a lunge. Then I do speed. That could be like a box jump, rotary jump. Then I do speed strength. So strength speed, which is basically, that would be like a clean, right? So doing something with a load and trying to get it fast. And then I do something opposite, like backward sprinting. That would be an example of our 4x4 power matrix. And again, if they have corrective exercise problems or foundation problems or don't have a base platform of strength, we would do our 4x4 matrix for foundation and strength before we did our 4x4 power matrix. Hope that makes sense, Jeff. Okay, guys. This is it for me, by the way. We have a Q&A coming up here next on medical, and then it's off for the holidays for us here at TPI. I hope all you guys have a great holiday season. I hope you have a great new year. Looking forward to 2019. I think we got some really cool, exciting things going on next year. And thanks for being a part of this. We will post dates for our next ones for next year. We like doing these at least once a quarter, if not more. And thanks everybody for everything you do. We appreciate it. And looks like I got no more questions. So we're signing off. Good luck out there. See you guys.